Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fretboard Confessional with half of your hosts. I am Chris McKee. Cooper's not here with me today, but we've got a special episode planned for you. This is basically to give you an idea of what's going on. Now, you will no doubt have heard by now that Cooper and I got to have an epic trip out to sunny San Diego to visit Taylor Guitars and a bunch of other stuff. And we got to do some cool stuff while we were there, spend some time with Bob Taylor and Andy Powers. And then after that, I got to spend some more time with Bob talking about some very cool guitars that have been released at this point, which is called the Legacy Series. For the 50th anniversary of Taylor Guitars, they're looking back and for the first time have kind of done a bit of a reissue on some of their classic guitars that people have loved from the past. This is really kind of unusual for Taylor, but in typical Taylor fashion, it's not a true reissue because they're also taking advantage of a lot of changes that they've done over the years. So in this interview, I get to sit down with Bob, talk a bit about the guitars, talk a little bit more in depth about some of the decisions that he made, he and his team, about what they were going to do with these guitars, what is unique about them. And if you pay very close attention to the guitars and to what we talk about, you'll find that there are some very unique aspects, some features that I think a lot of people will miss on some of these if you're not paying close attention. In addition to that, it's just a really great conversation with Bob. Bob is an incredibly intelligent man. He has really discovered a lot of things and earned all of the knowledge that he has over the years. And so it's fascinating to just kind of sit and talk and listen to him tell you, all sorts of stuff. He gave us a master class in what it means to dry wood while we were out there visiting with him. And what you'll hear in this interview is more of that. He is very generous with his time. He's also very generous with his knowledge, which is, fantastic and sometimes something that you don't often find in individuals. And just really a genuine person. So I hope you enjoy this interview that I have. I will say at the onset, some of this stuff we originally talked about, we had to restart the interview, but you'll see that the background I'm in is a little bit different. At the time, I had just broken my foot, and I was stuck at home, which is why it's just me and Bob in this. But there is a special appearance by Cooper with a question at the end that Bob answered truthfully. He didn't try to be a politician, and I loved his answer on this. So I hope you'll enjoy this. Check it out. Here we are.
Here we are. We get to talk about the Legacy series.
Yeah. We had a great interview, and I really appreciate all the time he spent with us when we were out at the factory. And after we left, I thought to myself, wow, there's some things I probably would have liked to have asked Bob about these specific guitars and get into the nitty gritty of it. And so it's cool we get the chance to do it. So 50 years, at what point coming up on the anniversary did this idea of doing a Legacy series, kind of a throwback to previous designs, come up?
It was a Friday afternoon. I'm driving home. It was sometime in March. Maybe it was April, something like that. It was a spring. And I'm like, it all of a sudden hit me that 50 years, that's different than 49 years. I mean, it's like 18 is different than 17.
Yeah.
21 is different than 20 and a half in the U.S., right?
Yeah.
It's a different thing. You arrive at that point, it's like, oh, I went from a minor to an adult. I went from, I can't have a beer legally to I can, these types of things.
Milestones.
Oh, I'm 16. I can get a driver's license.
Yeah.
At 50, I thought, okay, I may be a newcomer, but I do have a legacy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I do. And I just realized that I do, right? And that at 50 years, it's a good time to talk about it. And I was thinking about that 810 of mine, the guitar that I played my whole guitar playing career, which is not very illustrious, but there was a lot of time on that guitar, a whole lot of time. At one time, there was so much time on it that I ended up with, repetitive strain injury in my right hand from playing rhythm seriously, right? Days on end, and I thought about that guitar. It's like, we could reissue that guitar And I just called Monty. I was driving. It's like, what do you think of this idea? And he's like, yeah, any questions? And I thought, I think people would like to buy that guitar again.
Yeah.
That guitar that I made, I believe I showed you that guitar.
That was the one that I played. You said it was 49 years old?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when we first started Taylor, the first Taylors didn't have a logo on them, and they were basically American Dream guitars.
Mm-hmm.
They were what we were making in that shop before we decided of Taylor. And Kurt and I, Steve, our partner at the time, we had this idea about we had to come up with a numbering system. And we started with the 800 series, but I wanted to make myself a guitar that was patterned after what I thought was pretty on a guitar. And guitars at the time that I admired were, I'd just seen and purchased my first Martin ever after I made like 3 or 4 guitars, right? And I bought that D18 locally at a store. And what I got from that D18 was, wow, the inside of this is clean. And look at the way the binding is put, like a real live grown-up professional did this, not just some kid, 18-year-old kid like me hacking away at it.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. So I made myself a guitar, and I made it in the style that I thought was beautiful. I loved every minute of making that guitar. And that ended up being the 810. I had heard of scallop bracing, didn't really know much about it. Our scallop bracing is totally different than Martin's because I made it for 10 years before I knew what a Martin scallop bracing looked like. And the difference for the geeks out there is their brace is, say if it's this long, the scallops is in the middle, and my scallop starts at one end and comes up and goes. And it's just, all those things make a little difference in sound. I think that if I made a guitar exactly like somebody else's guitar, it would be like my mom trying to make spaghetti to somebody else's recipe. In the end, it would taste like her spaghetti.
Yeah.
She would just keep nudging it back to what she does, right? That's why we say here, where's a great place to get Mexican food in San Diego? Great, easy, Tijuana,
Mexico.
That's the best place to go, right? So I made that guitar, and that was the pattern for our first model. And for people that might be looking, other than this bridge, my first one sort of had like what you might think of a bridge on a Martin guitar,
Right.
or all the other dreadnoughts in the world.
Yeah.
But that guitar had this pick guard, it had this rosette, it had these diamond inlays with the little slots in it. It had this straight-sided peg head.
I'm glad you brought that up. I noticed that when I saw the guitar initially, that there's some little key differences, and I do want to ask you about some of the choices that were made on that. But you touched on the numbering system, and I've been curious about this. It sounds like just early on y'all went with a numbering system, and I'm critical sometimes of guitar companies when their model kind of designation number series doesn't make a whole lot of sense and it's difficult to decipher. And yours is pretty easy once you understand how it works. So what precipitated that? How did y'all come up with that? I mean, so early.
We were just brainstorming, and at the time when we were trying to come up with the numbering system, we had this 810 in our hands, and we had probably not the bound version, but the American Dream version of this, what we call 855.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that guitar.
Beautiful guitar.
It really is a good guitar. And that I have a picture of Neil Young, doing this on stage with it. And that happened in those early days. And, it's like, okay, that's like the only picture I have on the wall of an artist playing my guitar.
Was that the moment you felt kind of like you've arrived as a builder a bit?
No, I've never felt like I've arrived as a builder, not even yet.
Yeah.
And I don't. I think that I've contributed, but I don't think I've arrived. And that was a wonderful, wonderful moment. And I always say, and the next morning I had to go to work and try to figure out how to not go out of business.
How
But I
far
just,
into how far into the business was that, and how old were you at that point?
I'm guessing it was 1976. And so I was 21.
Wow.
Yeah. I was 19 when we started in 74. So yeah, I'd have been 21. And so back to that numbering system,
Yeah.
we thought, well, what if we did series? Because we want to have something that has future use. Where would we start? Well, what if we called this the 800 series? And it could be 3 letters. And what we had was that jumbo I showed you and the dreadnought. Those are the 2 shapes. And the last number could designate the shape. If it's a 0, it's a dreadnought. If it's a 5, it's a jumbo. We didn't have we weren't into new model fatigue by then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
It was pretty simple. And then the middle number, if it's below 5, is a 6 string. And if it's 5 or above, it's a 12 string. Thus the 810, the 810. And by the way, people in Europe don't say 810. They say 810, 614,
Really?
512. And we say 812, 855, right? So it's just kind of an interesting thing. People in the UK say, I have an 810.
Well, they also say aluminium, so it's okay. They can be wrong. It's fine.
Well, they swear they're right about it all. I love having those. Well, I say we're separated by a common language, right? And so, and then the next one became 855, 8 meaning 800 series. The series was rosewood spruce white binding. That's the series, okay. And the middle number was a 5 because it's a 12 string,
Mm-hmm.
and the last number was a 5 because it's a jumbo. And so then, if today I made a Grand Auditorium 800 series 12 string, okay, you get to tell me the number. It's an 800, 854. There you go.
Yeah.
You know the number before I even tell you, because
Because I know
each one of those columns means something.
Yeah.
And so then we thought, well, this is the nicest guitar you could ever make. I mean, we could go up to 9. I don't think we'll ever go to 1,000, but I have a feeling that if we, expand our company, we might want to go more towards 1, so that allowed us. So what if we make a guitar that's a different wood or a different combination of trade dress? Well, it could be a 700 series. Thus, you could have a 655 and a 755
Right.
and an 855 and a 555, and those things. So that numbering system has brought us through. So now we have the 10, the 0, the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, the 6, and the 7.
Mm-hmm.
We have an 810 would be a 6-string dreadnought. An 811 would be a 6-string grand theater. An 812 would be a 6-string grand concert. An 813 is bad luck, so we've never used it. An 814 is a 800 series grand 6-string auditorium.
Yeah.
16 grand symphony. 17 is a Grand Pacific, and an 18 is a grand orchestra. So
it's a very clear and smart numbering system. I do have a question though. Early on, since the 800 series was the rosewood spruce, I've seen a picture of a long-haired, bearded Bob Taylor hunched over the bench with what appears to be a very beautifully figured dreadnought that's in walnut.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a few questions. One, I don't recall a lot of builders back then using walnut. A lot still don't very often. I think it's a really wonderful tone wood. So I'm curious how you started using that and how you ended up designating that particular guitar.
We used walnut at the American Dream. We made guitars with walnut all the time. Now, when I say all the time, there was 5 hippie builders. We didn't get much done. Everybody made a guitar, start to finish. I made a guitar. Tim Larank made a guitar. Greg Daring made a guitar. Waxy made a guitar. Sam Radding made a guitar, start to finish. And we didn't have a numbering system, but we always thought that Walnut made nice guitars. And mostly, we've always used California walnut, which is beautiful. We do have models now made from Midwest walnut, black walnut, which is a different look, but still sounds wonderful. And when we've made walnut guitars in those early days, that could have been actually pre-Taylor. That could have been before we had the modeling system. Because I remember there's the picture that you're looking at is a series of photographs that a kid who went to art school in LA in photography, he's still a photographer today, and we're still in touch. He came down and shot his senior project in our place, and they were the first nice black and white photographs we had. And that was a batch of 6 guitars. Maybe they said Taylor on them, maybe they didn't. So they're sort of a tweener time. But let's say we were to do that now, we decide we're going to decorate it. We have to have a price starting point for something, like a category. So sometimes we might make an 810 LTD walnut, and that's how we would designate it. So we have the LTD, meaning it's a limited, and then we might designate it with a W for walnut or a K for koa or something like that. Oh, by the way, we ended up using K because we didn't have numbers for series. So the K series is koa, but it's still K14, K10,
right?
K24, that type of thing.
So there's 5 series in the Legacy, or 5 guitars in the Legacy series. You've got an 815, 855, both E models, 810E, 514 CE, or I should say 514 CE for our friends across the pond, 714 CE. How did you go about deciding which 5 that you wanted to have included as kind of a representative of Legacy?
Well, the 800s, let me put it in the most simple terms. 800s represent the first 20 years. The Grand Auditorium, the 800s, right? Now I'm not going to say the hundreds. I'm going to say the Grand Auditorium body. The 14 size represents the next 20 years or the next 30, right? When we designed the Grand Auditorium body, and we released it on our 20th anniversary as just an anniversary guitar. And it was non-cutaway. There was a rosewood spruce. There was a mahogany cedar. And then the next year we did the CE version of those, the first real cutaway we were doing all the time. Remember, we had introduced the Grand Concert in 83, right? So we had another body shape, but that was the first year we made it, that was a business and life-saving model because we were kind of in a little bit of doldrums because of disco and glam rock, and acoustic guitars weren't selling, and we were able to tap into the growing fingerstyle market with that guitar, right? And in fact, not only did we tap in to a growing market, we helped define that growing market. We helped to grow it by giving more people a guitar that was great for fingerstyle. But when we did the 514 CE, we finally had what we thought was the defining Taylor guitar. That Grand Auditorium, let's say the 514 CE and the 814 CE, they're the guitars that built Taylor guitars into what it is today. And one way that I like to say it, my good friend Chris Martin says, well, the Martin Dreadnought is the most copied guitar shape in the world. And I'm like, yep, no question. And the Taylor Grand Auditorium CE is the second most.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
really is.
Yeah.
You go to a trade show and around every corner, there's like, oh, I didn't know we had people borrow guitars at a trade show. Can we borrow a guitar to show our pedal? Can we borrow a guitar to show our amp? Can we borrow a guitar to show our strap?
Yeah.
I didn't know those people from China borrowed that's not a 614 CE, but your first, second, and third impression is it stops you in your tracks,
Yeah.
So we see that shape everywhere.
So on those two ground auditoriums, it's cedar. You talked about that being on that first release for the anniversary, but I don't, cedar kind of fell out of the normal line. We've done a number of custom orders and different models we've built with cedar, and I think it's a wonderful top tone wood. So I was curious what your thoughts are on that. I love that you've introduced these with cedar tops, and so I guess the question is twofold. One, why don't we see it much in the line anymore? And two, do you think that'll change?
Easy answer. It's really hard to obtain cedar right now. And so we're going, if we put a shoulder to it and we let the word out, we're going to be able to scrape together cedar to make a limited amount of guitars. And so we'll have it available for customs, but and we can do this legacy line. Now, I'm expecting this guitar will sell a lot.
I agree.
So there may come a time when we decide to change these to something else. Maybe we say, okay, it should be an 800, and an 814 CE legacy with spruce and a 514 CE. Maybe we won't give two backwoods for a choice. Look, I'm just riffing here.
Sure.
By the time this stuff gets codified and goes through Congress, gets through all of that, who knows? Everything I say might just be like a bunch of pucky. But because life as a guitar maker, that's a major guitar maker, supplies a lot of guitars, tens or hundreds of thousands of guitars to the market. It's a complex spreadsheet of a price at every $50 increment, and what wood can we get and how much pressure can we put on that particular species. And so we're always throttling back and forth. But the main thing that caused cedar to just go away or give a big long rest was supply.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Hard to believe, But I'll also say that back in the day when we bought that, cedar shake roofs were a huge industry. So we got to freeload off of the massive amount of cedar that was being cut for shake roofing.
Mm-hmm.
People don't use cedar shake roofing anymore because it has this problem called catching on fire.
Small issue. Yeah.
Yeah, small issue. And so that in reality, making roofing and siding was really probably more the demise of the cedar tree than anything else. But because it was a huge industry and they would just go get as much as they need, we go, well, we'll take that log and we'll take that log. Mm-hmm. We're used to freeloading off of bigger industries.
That makes sense. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So you, at the very earlier, we were talking about the 810. The headstock is shaped differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's an older shape. The inlays, you didn't go with like the progressive diamond inlays on these. These are going back further. But so they're not like true reissues though, because that 49-year-old 810 that I played is a slightly different boxier shape. So I'm curious what little things, because I wonder how many people would pick up on the headstock. What are the little choices that you made as you were coming up with how you wanted to present these and represent that legacy?
Okay. I wanted to be as close to those, the early guitars that built the first 20 years of Taylor guitars as possible, which is why we went back to the mustache bridge.
I love that, by the way.
Right, on the jumbos.
That. Yeah.
Right. However, the Martin style bridge, our shapes and our things in the early years when I'm 20 years old, it was like I saw a picture of a guitar, I made a bridge that looked like that. I never copied. I didn't have a favorite guitar that I was trying to copy, and I didn't come into guitar building as the story that you hear a lot. Well, I did a lot of repairs. I saw what the issues were with guitars, and I wanted to change that type of thing. Even my bolt-on neck, I'm just working on doing a dovetail. I'm like, screw this. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, this isn't how I'm going to spend my day. And so I made my first version of a bolt-on neck, and then my second version of a bolt-on neck, then our third version of a bolt-on neck. And before long, you'll see a fourth version of our bolt-on neck, and each one of them gets a little more clever and a little more user-friendly. And so I wanted a bolt-on neck, but my 810 had a bolt-on neck, but this one has the modern NT or Taylor neck. Right? I mean, because it should.
Yeah.
And it has the Taylor bridge, which we designed in 83 or something like that when we made this artist series of guitars.
Mm-hmm.
That was a tough time in the industry. And guitars were just, we sold guitars were granola. People were just tired of, you're talking disco, leisure suits, flowers.
Yeah.
Spandex. Then spandex went into rock. Then there was glam rock. Then there was hard rock. There was glam rock, Kiss. At the same time, there was Van Halen, right? I mean, the music wasn't that far different, but the style, the dress was way different. Like who that cat was playing that music was coming on stage looking different. Then grunge, right? Yeah. And during that time, you didn't see an acoustic guitar anywhere. And so we made this series we called Artist Series, which were colored guitars that were stained. They had these stained flames around the sound hole. And that guitar helped acoustic guitars get back on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there just before MTV started doing unplugged things. So a Martin OM comes back with Eric Clapton, and some Taylors get back on stage.
Acoustic guitars are cool again.
And acoustic guitars started a nice long climb again after being literally beat down to nothing like the day after Saturday Night Fever.
Right.
And the Bee Gees hit the big silver screen.
Yeah.
And in those days, we thought, will there ever be such thing as live music again? That was a serious discussion at NAMM shows, and everybody that made an instrument, it's like, it's nothing but DJs now. Boy, you go to the NAMM show, it was DJ this and DJ that and DJ everything.
Yeah. Oh, it goes around, comes around, I guess.
Yeah. So we put the modern Taylor bridge on the 810, the modern neck joint on the 810, and everything else is the same as the old guitar. And on the 855, we put the modern neck joint, and we put the original bridge. So the 855 is actually closer to, it has one less change.
Right. So you said to me when we were out there that this is not a limited series. These are going to be available. And you just talked about kind of challenges to Tonewoods. So that opens the door to potentially other models maybe coming into the Legacy series, depending upon what Congress says about it.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do is keep the Legacy series as tight, as few choices as possible, so that we don't throw another model fatigue at not only the consumer but the dealer.
Yeah.
Because that whatever you stock, it's the wrong guitar. The day, isn't it?
We've done pretty well. We stock a lot. But yeah, invariably, someone always wants the one thing that you sold 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Well, a lot of times, you guys make great content, and other people that do that, you put content out on the guitars that you have, you believe in, you want to show.
Right.
And there are other stores that are more walk-in stores, and they keep a wide variety of guitars. And our market isn't just the United States either. It's the globe.
Yeah.
And so some places it's super modern and it's internet-based, and in other places it's really provincial, like the U.S. was in the 70s and 80s, right? And so we kind of have to think globally. But I think that these 5 guitars represent something. But maybe one day maybe there's an idea of making limiteds of certain things. Maybe we do a grand concert limited legacy, 810, with a 1 7/8 neck, like Chris Proctor wanted, So you play that finger style like the classical guitar player, and really, and you make 500 of them, and they go out there and they find a buyer, and then you give that thing a breather, right? I'd like to keep, and our ability to get the cedar will limit what we can make. I think that probably the amount of people that'll buy that cedar top guitar and the supply will find some type of nice equilibrium.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the 814, no, the 514 CE is a special guitar. And our current 814 CE Builders Edition, it pleases a lot of people, and we could tell by how many of them sell.
Yeah. No, they're great
That's
guitar.
a really fine guitar, and it's got the ergonomics that modern players like, and it's got the tone and the intonation that good players love, and that type of thing. But I'm probably more than anything, I'm excited. Well, with the grand auditoriums, that mahogany cedar.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful combination.
If you, most of us are pretty average players, even people, and today's average is yesterday's good. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the internet has expanded the ability for people to learn, and you've seen the talent just go up.
The talent just goes up. But until you get persnickety about your tone, because you've developed your own bone tone, the way you want to, I'm going to give an example. There's a tuner made by a company called Sanderson. We used to use it to intonate our guitars. And in it, it's piano tuners buy this. And in it, there's 25 preset piano tunings and 25 blanks for a tuner to make the tuning that they want for the client that they're serving.
Yep.
So if you could tune a piano 50 different ways, tell me which one is the right way. This goes into this big conversation about guitar intonation and mean tuning and tempered tuning and, fanned frets and all these kind of things, right? But if a piano player can develop their style, it could be, I play ragtime, and so my piano needs to be tuned to help ragtime sound in tune. Yeah. And someone else might say, I play Beethoven, and my piano needs to be tuned so that those chord, harmonies and runs feel in tune. So a guitar player can also get to a point where they say, I've developed the way I play guitar, and I need a guitar that suits me now. And then that might not be the guitar they already owned, even though it's an incredible guitar. But if you're a person that buys a guitar, you just want some really great tone, that 810, that 855, that 514 CE mahogany cedar, you can't not sound good on that guitar, even if you're not accomplished. It helps the average player or the beginner sound good to their own ear, to their audience. And when you sound good to yourself, it spurs you on.
Well, I'm excited. That's always been one of my favorite Taylors, and the whole Legacy series is exciting. So I can't wait for people to get them in their hands and see what comes of them. I've got one last question because I know we started a little late, but Cooper, since he's not here, texted me a question for you, Bob. And he said, hey, Bob, longtime listener, first-time caller. First off, thank you for the time you took with us last week. It was an incredible time. You've obviously seen the influence that your designs have had on the greater acoustic guitar market. Lots of Taylors pioneered building techniques and designs, having inspired other builders and manufacturers all over the world. My question for you is, which builders out there besides Eddie Powers do you feel are creating instruments that will further inspire generations today?
Well, um, Collings guitars to me make such fine guitars. And I think that they will definitely inspire builders and musicians. Dana Bourgeois has done an incredible job of making some really fine guitars. His style of voicing a guitar is great. And now that Eastman has taken them on, I've even seen some of the import copies of that, which are really good guitars. Don't get me wrong. I see a good guitar, I'm going to name it.
Yeah.
Those are really good guitars. Alistair Atkins in the UK is making nice vintage guitars.
Right.
He's got his jam, what he makes with it, and those are great guitars. I think that Richard Hoover at Santa Cruz has really blossomed in making every guitar a custom guitar.
Right.
Right. There's also, and even besides acoustics, what are you going to say about Tom Anderson or John Suhr or Roger Sadowski? And that when I went to Summit,
The Fretboard Summit?
the Fretboard Summit a month ago, I saw some incredible guitar builders up there. Two of them that really caught my eye is Megan Wall and Tyler Wall. And they're not related, but they both have the same name. But they both make archtop guitars, and they both studied with Tom Ribicki. So they have styles that are their own, but Tom Ribicki-esque. There's Isaac Jang, who's makes some of the most incredible guitars in the world, and all he does is go around and worship everybody else. He does things in sort of a Irvin Samaji style. Irvin Samaji is a pretty famous guitar builder that takes on an apprentice, and that's old school apprenticeship. You're his slave until he's done with you.
Yeah,
but he turns out some people. I could go on and on and on. That's why I go to Chris Alvarado down at Driftwood, and people have probably seen his channel that are listening here.
Fun channel to watch.
I love his channel, and I become friends. I find these guys, I write them, and it's like, hey, want to be friends? I've been around. Maybe I know some tricks to get around the block, and so he just made a guitar that he took up to Eddie's Fine Guitars, and he was thrilled because he poured a lot into it. He would call me every week, it seems, or write me, okay, we're making more progress on this guitar, and we're doing this and that. I love that stuff, which is why I'm going to Mannheim next week. Mannheim, Germany has a summit that's like the Fretboard Summit, except for there's 800 booths.
One of the electric builders.
Everybody that makes guitars.
One of the electric builders we work with out of the UK, Patrick James Eggle. He's been showing some of the stuff that's going to be there already. So that sounds like a fun summit to go to.
Oh yeah, it's going to be fun, and I love that stuff. What I love is walking around, and everybody that's making a guitar is trying to solve some kind of problem. They're not just like, I want to make a guitar and make some money on it. No, nobody's doing that. They're absolutely, they've caught the virus. They're a contagious carrier of the virus of a guitar maker, right? And they're completely afflicted, and they're trying to solve their own craftsmanship. They're trying to solve, how can I make art? They're trying to solve, how can I make a musical instrument? They're trying to solve, how can I figure out how to manufacture this thing, in my small shop and make a tool. There's guys that's like, look at the tool. Bob, I can't believe you stopped by my booth. I want to show you how I make this. I'm like, I want to see how you make it.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I just love it.
Well, and I think
I was in a dealer recently, and I said, hey, show me some of your custom Martins. It's like, I'll just pick one, grabbed a guitar, showed it to me, and I played it. It's like, that's a nice guitar.
Yeah.
That's a nice guitar. We make a nice guitar too. And when it comes to tone, I don't think you can't win the tone game.
Subjective.
It's subjective. You can win the playability game, the consistency game, the excellence of manufacturing game. I just want to be in the ballpark of tone. And there's some people that play first base, and there's some people that play second base. There's some people that play pitcher, catcher, left field, right field. They're all important, but all of us are at least in the park that are making good. Now there's guitars that just don't sound good enough to be in the ballpark, right? But there's more and more guitars out there all the time that are getting in the ballpark because people are learning how to do it.
Well, and I think, we talked about talent rising. Over time, there's more education out there for people who want to learn how to become a luthier. And there's tools that you pioneered early on that nobody was using that have become commonplace in even the highest end, smallest builder's shop because CNCs become, more affordable in cases. And so I think that, what you and a lot of builders, it seemed like there was this period of time, through the 70s and early 80s, that there's this blossoming of what we consider pretty established companies now, but weren't, and trying new things that have now led to other people taking that inspiration and those lessons, and they're trying new things. And it's exciting for me to think about what it's going to look like 20 years from now. And that's legacy.
Yeah, it really is. And sometimes for people to hear that, it's like, well, what could change in a guitar shop and how could that make a difference? Well, this podcast is a result of this kind of thing improving. You used to have to be NBC to do what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you could do it from your home and from this little room we call the shed across from my office, right? And we're broadcasting to a wide audience. They could turn to this channel or not, and they can have reruns and don't have to wait for us to show them. I remember when the first digital camera came out, and it was like a screen like this big, the size of a postage stamp, and the picture lived there. You didn't have any way to get it out of that little Canon camera. And now no one's doing a movie with film anymore, and everything, the ability to do desktop publishing, Photoshop work, all that kind of stuff. So if those tools could come to the market and make what you and I are doing right now possible, the same kind of things have worked their way into what I'd call micro manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's true. When we bought our first Vidal, it was because Tom Anderson had gotten one and told me about it. I'm like, I got to get one of these. This is my future. Don't ask me for a return on investment. I just see my future, and this is on the path. And a lot of people were afraid of them in that I'm too stupid to use it. I'm like, no, you're not. You are not. And the other is, it costs too much money. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. And then the other one is, it's going to take my craftsmanship away. No, it won't. No, it won't. Right? And so now there's desktop size things. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And people use it. Like, why wouldn't you want an accurate computer-driven machine to place the fret slots where they go? Why wouldn't you want that? Or to be able to do nice inlay work, So anyway, the whole industry's come along. I'm super proud of it. And I think we have contributed to what guitar making is right now. When I made my first guitar, there was one book that I knew that you could get. Then there was a second one, but there was a book called Classic Guitar Construction by Irving Sloan.
Mm-hmm.
And then later there was a book called it was David Russell Young, Construction of an Acoustic Guitar, something like that. And that guy had a flush-mounted neck with no joint at all, glued on with epoxy. Now that's scary. I wanted bolts. I hope that epoxy never lets loose.
Yeah, for real.
But that was all there was. I say we made our guitars with lumber company timber or wood and hardware store tools. Stu Mack in those days, you could buy a banjo kit. That was it. Then Dan Earlywine came on and started making videos, how to do things. Bless his heart. I mean, that just changed things.
Yeah.
Frank Ford at
Griffin.
Griffin had his website, right?
I learned
And
a
he
lot from that website.
Yeah.
Yeah, frets.com. It's still Web
Frets.com.
1.0. The late, great Frank.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Well, it's been an amazing 50 years that you guys have done. And Bob, I appreciate the time out there at the factory and also seeing some of your really cool old stuff. And this was awesome. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Chris. And hi, Cooper. You're back there somewhere. Long-time listener.
Long-time listener.
First-time caller. I can't wait to get these Legacy series to you because I'd love to get your feedback on what people think about them.
Oh, we are chomping at the bit to get our hands on them. And I think we're going to have a lot of cool content we put out with them. And I think they're going to be received well. So I'm anxious to see how it goes.
Okay. Super. Right on.
Awesome.
I'll see you later, Chris.
Okay. See ya.
Love you. Mean it.
Love you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
I'm going to get Jay now to come in and wrap this up, and I'll get ready for my next rodeo.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it. Bob Taylor, truly a unique individual, a joy to spend time with. One of the things that I really loved in our time with him in California is we went to his office and got to see some of his old guitars that we mentioned in that interview. And he had some guitars in there that had some finish cracks or a crack on the back of it or whatever. And he's a very pragmatic person. And his attitude was like, yeah, it's okay. Move on. Play the guitar. And I find that to be refreshing. And I know some of you, baby your guitars, but, maybe gravitate to some of that Bob Taylor attitude of, it's great for what it is. Move on. It's fine. Stuff's going to get damaged if you're loving it and using it. So I hope that you enjoyed that interview with Bob Taylor. And if you liked this format, let us know, because I think it'd be cool to do some more interviews like that with people that maybe aren't in our neck of the woods, and we can kind of pick their brain. So let us know if you like that format, and if you would like to see some more interviews, maybe give us an idea of who you'd like to see us interview next. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching our podcast and everything on our YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, and we'll see you next time.